Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Super Bowl 59 is all set. Unfortunately, it will not include our Washington Commanders. Yes, they fell to the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, 55-23. Oh, my Lord. The NFC Championship loss may have dimmed the immediate Super Bowl dreams for the team and the fans, but Commanders fever remains strong, along with the excitement for our quarterback, Jayden Daniels, and his very promising future for the Burgundy and Gold. Tonight, we're at the Sports Roundtable, and we'll take a dive into the exhilarating highs and some of the disappointing lows of Washington's beloved team. We'll also preview the Super Bowl matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. My guests are Donald Ware, host of Box to Row on Sirius XM, and ESPN radio sportscaster, also award-winning sports journalist Kelsey Nelson. Thank you all for joining the conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Excited to talk. Well, I'm excited. I know fans might not be as excited. But there's no sports going on, folks. I promise you we'll get through this.
Yeah, and you know, we do have I have to have Kelsey talk about her disclaimer. You are still a Commanders fan, are you not?
So let me say this. I worked for to be honest here. I worked for the Commanders in Maryland. So I am a Baltimore Ravens fan that covers the Commanders, but always had love for the DC team.
Wait a minute. What was this about Maryland and what?
I'm a Maryland girl, crab cakes and football. I'm a Ravens girl. So I'm purple and black. I am still hurt about that Mark Andrews drop, which I know we might talk about in this segment, and I want it for Lamar Jackson. But everybody that knows me knows I have so much love for the Washington Commanders and the Burgundy and Gold Herald.
Donald, I can take her off the program. I mean, there's a difference with hold on. There is a difference between being a Maryland girl, as you say, and being a Baltimore girl.
Correct.
Baltimore and the D.C., Maryland suburbs.
Correct.
They're not the same.
Those are fighting
words. Yes, they're not the same. I'm Louisdale bred, Silver Spring raised. You know what I mean? And but I get the Baltimore thing. We both went to Morgan, Harold, so like we understand the Baltimore thing, right?
Yes, and then we're both MoCo people, so you also understand the Montgomery County connection.
There is Montgomery County is not Baltimore. I can't believe that we are starting this conversation about Baltimore.
But you know what? Since I'm on this program, I can share why I was never allowed to grow up a Washington fan. Washington was the last team to integrate. I have a family that went to HBCUs, right? Grambling State University and Jackson State in my household. And so essentially because of Black history, my family would not root for the then Washington WHUR team. So again, it's how history goes back to it. That's the team that actually did hire me and gave me my first team job. But that's actually why, Harold, I was not allowed to originally root for the WHUR team because, history had to force them to integrate. And here we are today.
You know what? I'm already done. I'm so done.
I just gave a good history lesson and you're done with me.
I am so done. Listen, let's talk a little bit about the unfortunate part of yesterday. Let's take a look at some of this video for those of you listening. I know it's going to be difficult, but we'll talk about this on the other side.
Here's Barkley, a little shovel, looking for an edge, gets it. Saquon Barkley, first down. Barkley, oh! Saquon, touchdown. Hurts. Gives to Barkley. Barkley, touchdown.
They've been basically unstoppable.
Here is Barkley. Outside. Barkley, touchdown.
Barkley. That's unbelievable. We do know that Jayden Daniels said just last week before the game that in order to win this, Kelsey, they were going to have to stop Saquon Barkley. Was he being prophetic?
Look, I mean, anybody who's anybody knew going into this game that Saquon Barkley the one that Washington was going to have to watch out for. But also anyone who was going into this game knew that Washington's run defense was a problem, Harold, going into this game. When you look at the course of this season, look, Saquon Barkley is having a magical season. I'm one of those folks that are still mad that the Eagles did not let him break that record during the regular season that he should have had. But he's hard to stop. And honestly, when I saw that momentum shift, I was in a sports bar watching the game and I felt it. I said, oh man, the Eagles look good. They look really good. Saquon looks good, and Washington's having a problem stopping them. But again, I think that, and this is one of those games, Harold, too. When you look at that final score, and of course, Saquon had those 2 quick touchdowns, which I think gave a lot of momentum, right, to the Philadelphia Eagles. But, when you look at this final score, I think it does an injustice because, yeah, you look at the final score, you're saying 55 points given up by the defense. And if you didn't watch the game, if you don't look at the box score, you won't understand the story. But again, Saquon was a part of the reason why they won, Harold, and Washington knew they had to stop him. But it was also other people that they got beat by as well, right? A.J. Brown being able to step up. Whatever you're reading in that Inner Excellence book, those affirmations worked for A.J. Brown in this last game that didn't work in the playoff games prior. So all in all to say, I think Washington, unfortunately, beat themselves in this one. And, they went from being the underdog team to a dog that grew into being dogs, I think, throughout the season, to all of a sudden, again, I know Washington fans are still excited about them, but essentially they lost part of that identity. But to be fair, Philadelphia was a top seed going in. They were a Super Bowl favorite. And Philadelphia Eagles proved they are who we thought they were in that game last night.
Yeah, well, that I think you really put it very, very well. Because look, Donald, first of all, one of Saquon Barkley's thighs is as big around as Kelsey's waist. Okay, so we know that we've got that, and when you got 2 of those, powerful thighs with speed, agility, athleticism. The Eagles are an excellent, excellent team. And if you really think about it, if you just look at, at the scores, the Commanders, they had what, 23 points, which was closer to the Buffalo Bills Chiefs score.
Yeah.
No,
it's fair. I think that because the sort of the disappointment, at least for me, you go back a month ago, a little bit more than a month ago, the Commanders stopped Saquon Barkley in the second half. Like, he did nothing in the second half. That's what made it a little bit more disappointing. But I think he obviously got off to the great start with that 60-yard run. But look, you're not going to be able to overcome 4 turnovers. You cannot expect to have 4 turnovers in this football game and overcome those 4 turnovers. And I would say the key turnover in this game was the Jeremy Nichols fumble off of the kickoff. Why? It was still a 1-possession game, going into the half. So at the worst, nothing happens. You run the clock out. You're still down 1 possession going into the half. Inexplicably, Nichols fumbles. The Eagles capitalized, score. Now you're down 2 possessions. And remember, the Commanders stopped them on the first possession of the third quarter. So if that had been a 1-possession game, now the momentum is a little bit different. So definitely the Commanders shot themselves in the foot.
Let's listen to Jaden Daniels and talk about it in a bit.
I couldn't be prouder of the guys in the locker room. Just year one, everybody not really knowing each other. Rookies, the vets did a tremendous job of, bringing us in and helping us out. And we all just meshed, and we got to this point. But at the end of the day, man, we lost. It sucks, but we'll move on from this.
One of the things that I find so interesting, and I would argue, Kelsey, that is really likable, even lovable about Jaden Daniels, is that his persona is always kind of zen.
Right.
He's never way up. He's never way down. I mean, obviously on the field, certainly. But when he's talking to the public, he is just cool.
Yeah, I go on radio in New Orleans a lot. And of course, Jaden Daniels has ties to LSU, so they love him down there. And this is what they're saying. If you watched him in college, this is the way he's always been. And I think this is why everyone loves JD5. After this game, no one's mad right now at Jaden Daniels. The young rookie played a hell of a season that no one was expecting. I'm old enough to remember when folks were trying to tell me that the Commanders should draft Drake May. And I was like, no. Jaden Daniels is the only answer, and thus he proved it this season. And you think about the pressure that he was under, right? I know the Commanders have been saying anybody, anywhere, right, anytime, and essentially saying there was no expectations because essentially they were supposed to finish last in the NFC East, right, next to the Giants when you look at the predictions going into the season. But Jaden Daniels treated every game, again, just the head was cool. The veterans have praised him for this, from Zach Ertz to Bobby Wagner. I mean, he makes everybody feel comfortable. And I think because of his demeanor, Harold, he brought DC together in ways I have not seen. I have not seen a quarterback be able to make the whole city get behind him again in his first season. And I'm talking about young and old, black and white. I mean, everybody loves Jaden Daniels. And then, I think his mother as well, right, is also making us love him even more. Miss Jackson, all of a sudden coming out and saying, oh, he was going to be focused on football. Because if we know about the athletes in DC, we have had high hopes. And this includes quarterbacks in Washington. But DC is also a city with lots of distractions. You never hear about him getting any trouble, right? He's always just, and then at Wizards games, there's a reason why I know everyone goes crazy, because if you've gone to Wizards game, you do need something to be excited about, Harold, because they're having a kind of rough season. And so when Jaden Daniels makes that appearance, it's exciting. But his mom's saying, I'm not going to have any girls bothering him. Like, he's focused on the mission. And Washington fans, I think that's what they've been waiting for. That's what they've been yearning. Someone who really cares about football and is going to put it on their backs. And I think that's what Jaden Daniels has delivered. I mean, think about this was one of the teams that was most successful in fourth down conversions. What rookie does that? Washington's rookie does that, right? With an offensive line, mind you, that he had to get used to it and get better with throughout the season. So all that to say, I think Jaden Daniels is everything that you could ask for. I know he's probably carrying this loss heavy on his back as he's an athlete. He's a competitor. But all in all, Jaden Daniels did everything and more that everybody could want him to do, and did it in a kind way. The most we got was a cute little dance sometimes after the touchdown.
Right.
TikTok dances, but that's really the most we got out of Jaden, and everything else, he's just calm on the bench looking at everybody else like, yeah, I'm ready to go back and play football and get in the game and get my team, the Cardiac Commanders, right? That win that he had so often done.
Donald, one of the things that I was saying to myself yesterday, and also to my family, we had a great big old football party at my sister's house yesterday, and when it came to halftime, I was jokingly saying that it looks like Jaden Daniels is going to have to just say, look, I'm just going to have to do this myself. Because as we've seen throughout the year, when this quarterback decides to be a runner, when this quarterback decides to throw the long ball, he has really done it. And we did see a little bit of that yesterday.
We did. And you that's the thing. Like, I was at the Chicago game. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a season ticket holder. So I was at the Chicago game. I was at the Cowboys game. Now, I left the Cowboys game. I must admit that. I hate that happened, even though the Commanders missed that extra point. But look, you felt like, you're right. Even down 2 scores going into the third quarter, you still felt like the Commanders were in this game. Let's go back. Again, I go back to Philly a little more than a month ago. Similar scenario. Eagles get out to the fast start. Saquon Barkley is running wild, and the Commanders came back. So I still felt like the Commanders were in this game, and that Jaden Daniels magic would come through. It just was for not because of the turnovers. Again, you're -4 in the turnover department. Yes, sometimes you can win games. I think the Commanders have been -3 or 4 a time. You're not going to, in an NFC championship game, you cannot be -4 in the turnover department and expect to win a football game.
Right.
Yeah.
Every team that had, I was going to say here, every team that had turnovers in the playoffs, they lost. And this is a Commanders team that went into the game tied with the 8th fewest turnovers throughout the regular season. So essentially what we saw was an uncharacteristic Commanders team. Thus why we saw an uncharacteristic loss, right, in this Commanders team that had got so many people to believe.
Hold on. We're going to continue this conversation in just a bit, but don't forget you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about the amazing year for the Washington Commanders. In spite of yesterday's loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game, we continue with Donald WHUR, host of Box to Row on Sirius XM and ESPN radio sportscaster, also award-winning sports journalist Kelsey Nelson. I want to talk a little bit about what Dan Quinn said yesterday.
For the last 7 weeks, really, we've lived in the complementary football, and that would be the turnover margin, and we didn't create any opportunities for us and lost 4 and 28 points off of those 4 turnovers. That was big. We knew that was going to be a big part of this game. Both of us were +6 heading into today in the postseason, and for us, our season had ended 1 game short. When I told the players, I really wanted them to savor this time in the locker room with their teammates. The locker room's never the same year to year, and they've really created something like very unique here and very special.
Kelsey, Dan Quinn is an interesting coach. He kind of reminds me of the Lions coach, big guy, emotional, and yet still handling these things with grace. As I mentioned, we were joking about it earlier. Yeah, you did work for the Commanders several years ago, so you have a really unique point of view. In your mind, what changed with this organization to get them this far in 1 year?
My gosh, it's a dream, right? I mean, most of the time when teams go through change, they tell fans expect a rebuild, right? What do they say in Philly all the time? Trust the process. And essentially that's what Washington, I think, was going to try to sell to fans. But you have to remember, we have in the new ownership group, we had someone born and bred from the area. So he knows about the culture, right? DC sports culture and how this is really a football city. You bring in Peters, you bring in all these new faces to leadership, right? They also recently named a new team president. But I think when it comes to Dan Quinn specifically, and I love that you compared him to Dan Campbell, right? 2 people that everyone kind of is looking at for Coach of the Year finalists. And I really don't say, I don't know how you don't give it to Dan Quinn when Commanders had a 4-13 season and they go to 12 wins. But they've been talking a lot about brotherhood. It's a lot in the locker room. It's a lot amongst the players. And Harold, this is the first time I've really seen it. You have to remember, there's a lot of off the field troubles, right? Just a couple of years ago with the Commanders. I mean, you can still look up the headlines. I mean, we also just saw Dan Snyder, right, in the news before this game talking about how he's salty essentially that the Commanders are having all this success. So even all that baggage is kind of still lingering there, but they focused and they believed, and Dan Quinn bought into them. And then I think even when you honestly go down to the 4th down conversions, he trusts his team. He trusts him a lot. And remember, you're doing this with a rookie. You see it next door to in Baltimore as well with John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. But remember how long
Are we talking about Baltimore again?
I have to bring up Baltimore.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Baltimore here. I got to show them some love too. But Dan Quinn, essentially, like I said, to anybody, anywhere, anytime. I mean, he made them go into each game believing, right? So let them say we're underdog. We're going to treat this game like any other game. And I think, and also I have to shout out who he brought in, right? Cliff Kingsbury on offense. I mean, offensively, they've turned around completely. I know defense, again, it's probably a rough time to talk about defense again when you give up 55 points, but still Joe Witt and what he's did on that defensive side of the ball. I mean, essentially, Harold, Joe Witt went into this game saying, look, if Jalen Hurts wants to run, we're going to treat him like a running back, essentially saying we're going to play physical football going into this game. Dan Quinn, and again, when he came here, people had questions like, okay, he can probably get the defense right, but will he be able to get the offense right? He got everybody to buy into his way, but he's also a player's coach. So all to say, he got the guys to believe with what they put on the field. That's why they were fearless, as Donald alluded to. That's why when the team was behind points in games, Dan Quinn was kind of calm on the sidelines. He knew who he had, who he put together with this roster. There was a lot of new faces, Harold, on this roster that Dan Quinn brought in. He knew who he wanted, right? And I just thought he essentially did the game plan, and the players believed in the game plan.
Yeah. To piggyback off of Kelsey, like Dan Quinn is the quintessential head coach. Think about it. You talked about, and I know Kelsey talked about. He's got 3 former head coaches that are on his staff. Look at the way he interacts with the media. When he talks to the media, right? Like he'll say your name, particularly if like you're a beat writer or you cover the team on a regular basis. Like he'll call your name out. Like he is, I don't know. And by the way, a lot of lessons learned from his first time around as the head coach of the Falcons, right?
Yep.
For many years, he was the defensive coordinator, did a lot, for the Cowboys. So this guy gets it. I don't know. And it's not coach speak. That's the thing that impresses me. Like you hear a lot of coach speak. This guy's not about, he doesn't tell you every single thing, but he doesn't use a lot of coach speak either. I don't know if I at least have ever seen a coach like this that can get the maximum out of his players, interact with the media the way that he does, has had the success to the point 4-13 to 12 wins in the NFC Championship game with the roster. Look at the roster. Like it's not a great, let's be clear and honest. It's not a great roster. Yet he was able to get all of that done in this season. So to me, the quintessential head coach is Dan Quinn.
I love that.
Well, and Donald, again, from a football fan, but not fanatic point of view, I think you're right. You have Jaden Daniels, you have Scary Terry McLaurin, who is amazing. There's no question about it. Definitely a clutch player. Brian Robinson Jr., also a very good running back, but even from my point of view, I'm always worried about that knee that he was shot in. And I know that these are elite athletes and what have you, and you just never know what they've been through to make sure that they are operating at the level that they are operating. But again, Donald, I think about, as they say, the big fellas up front. love the big fellas. But to me, it seems that there is a feeling that is beyond football with the Commanders this year that we never saw with the Washington football team. There is a feeling that we have not seen since Doug Williams led the team to a Super Bowl. And it's not football, it's family. Am I overstating that, Donald, you think?
I don't think so. Look, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? Like, and this is still Washington country in a lot of respects, right? Like you got the Carolina Panthers and all of that. There are, and look, I was in Tampa. Like I was in Tampa a couple of weeks ago. Like it must have been 40% of that stadium must have been Washington Commanders fans. Like Washington Commanders fans prior to the game took over Ybor City. Like this is the team has been galvanized, to your point. After 33 years of not getting to this point, like there have been some seasons there that they were decent and whatnot. You can look at the RG3 season. That was a magical season. This feels different because not only was this a great season in the first year, the future looks bright. Now, I'm not going to sit back here and say, well, next year they can get back, maybe get over the hump, because let's look at the Lions. The Lions were in this position last year. This year, they fell in the divisional round to the Commanders. So this is going to be a process. Maybe we get back to the NFC Championship, Super Bowl moving forward. But I think the process and the infrastructure is in place that can lead to eventually winning a Super Bowl, maybe here in the next 3 to 4 years or so, if not so.
But Kelsey, we know that there are a lot of things that happen during the offseason, especially when we're talking about the draft. And to be quite honest, it almost seems to me like, and we're going to just go ahead and transition into this part of the conversation, that the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, are the Cowboys of old, are the Pittsburgh Steelers of old. They are, and there's been a lot of talk about, baby goat for Kansas City,
right?
And I lived in Kansas City, so I know, I know the kind of passion that that they have. but I also lived in Buffalo, New York. And before we hear from Sean McDermott, let me say I spoke to my former co-anchor at the NBC affiliate in Buffalo, New York today, and we both cried on the phone because, look, Buffalo just can't seem to get a break. Stand by.
Well, they're a good football team. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to 7 straight AFC Championship games, and that's no excuse. This is a good football team. We got to keep working to get over that hump. There's no doubt about it. So we've won a lot of tough games this year against really good opponents, really good coaches, and I'm proud of this football team for it. So this is obviously a challenge for us. We'll figure it out.
Kelsey, my goodness, is it the ghost of Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills? They just can't get a break up there.
My gosh, the same conversations, and yes, Harold, I'm going to mention Baltimore because the same conversations they're having in Buffalo, they're having in Baltimore, right? When it comes to the AFC, because who do you have to get through each year? It's always now been Kansas City. And Harold, I've been to the last couple of Super Bowls. Kansas City has always been there. What Patrick Mahomes has done, we hear Tom Brady in the broadcast booth. We didn't know if we'd get even somebody close. And for Patrick Mahomes to be this successful, still young in his career, mind you, and a team that always does have questions about, again, we talk about the offseason. Washington's going to have an offseason. Kansas City has an offseason. And every year, who is Kansas City going to be able to bring back? What weapons are they going to get Patrick Mahomes?
Taylor Swift.
And they've got Taylor Swift in the press box. Even Clark was at a game, right? Not too long ago. I mean, they bring all the celebs. But Kansas City, and we can say this word, they've built a dynasty, Harold, in Kansas City. And Patrick Mahomes, there's many people thinking we are going to see the three-peat in New Orleans. I know everybody else loves, Travis Kelce, and again, how he always gets open. I know the last game wasn't the best game, but how he always gets open, is still surprising to me when that's, Patrick Mahomes' favorite target. Their run game can get strong, their defense. It just seems like they can always get it. Now, I'm excited about Super Bowl because we have seen the Eagles and the Chiefs go at it in the Super Bowl before. Obviously, the teams have changed a bit going into this one, but Kansas City seems like they make the impossible possible. I know there's a lot of fans out there, too, who talk about the officiating, but come on now. The rest are used to Kansas City, Harold. They're always in the big game. And then, yes, playing Arrowhead is a very hard thing to do. But I think, but you can't discredit the Chiefs. That was a great game. If you watch AFC football, that seemed like a typical matchup because remember, even last year when the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl, they also just got there, right? Defeating the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. So they can do it at home. They can do it on the road. And no one has been able, with the Chiefs, essentially you have to do what the Eagles did. You have to go out and get a big score, get a big lead, but they have a good defense. So how do you do that? No one has found the recipe. So what Andy and Patrick have been able to do, it's just hard to beat, hard to stop. There's a lot of Kansas City folks I know that book their Super Bowl plane tickets and hotels a year in advance because they know where they're going to be, Harold, in February.
Yeah, what about that, Donald? Are we talking about baby goat with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs?
No doubt. I think dynasty is the appropriate word. If you go to 3 straight Super Bowls with the opportunity to win 3 straight, having already won 2, and then Patrick Mahomes has won 3. I think if he wins this one, we may have to take away the word baby. Not saying that he is the greatest of all, because Tom Brady, what Tom Brady was able to accomplish, that is absolutely tremendous. But he is getting, certainly to that point. And, it was 2 weeks ago, I said the winner of the Bills and Ravens game would take the Chiefs down. I felt like the Chiefs had a little bit of a kink in the armor, but boy, was I. But going into that game with the Bills and the Chiefs, I definitely had the Chiefs in that game because of the way that the Chiefs played against a pretty good Houston team that has a really, really good defense. I think the key, we talk about Patrick Mahomes, and I think the key to the Chiefs has been the defense. Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, he does not get enough credit. When you're talking about this run, that has been a lot about Spagnuolo. And let's talk about 2 years ago. It's a good thing that the Chiefs re-signed Chris Jones. Chris Jones is the defensive tackle. He's a game wrecker. As much as we talk about Mahomes, this defense is elite, and Spagnuolo knows when to dial up the defense to get the stops, as they did last night against the Bills.
I did, want to talk a little bit more about the Commanders game. Let's hear from Jalen Hurts, and we'll come back.
I think we need to change we need to change our approach to all of this. Yeah, I don't play the game for stats. I don't play the game for numbers, any statistical approval from anyone else. And I understand that everyone has a preconceived notion on how they want it to look or how they expect it to look. And I told you guys that winning and success is defined by that particular individual, and it's all relative to the person. And what I define it as is winning. And so the number one goal is always to come out here and win.
Kelsey, was that Marlon Brando in The Godfather? I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
Look, there's a lot of ladies out there who live for Jalen Hurts' looks, I will say, in the game. And, Nino Brown, he's had so many comparisons. But, I think when it comes to Jalen Hurts, and I've put this on my Twitter a lot, I think he's so disrespected. This is a Philadelphia Eagles franchise, some of whom before the season did not want Jalen Hurts back in that quarterback seat. They did not feel like he could deliver the city of Philly a Super Bowl. And Jalen Hurts hears everyone talking when it comes to greatest quarterbacks. His name is not usually mentioned, right, in the top 10. And you think about Jalen Hurts and what he's been able to do. And mind you, think about that offensive line that he was able to do it behind yesterday, right? The injuries. And that's kind of why I was worried about this game for Philadelphia going into it, because the health of the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They were doing that tush push, right? With Landon Dickerson, and Jurgens, like they had guys hurt, and like you literally saw it, and they were like, no, I'm still going to go in the game, coach. I'm still going to go in the game. And if you watch the tush push, it's all about velocity, right? And speed and timing, and you're putting somebody with a bad knee in. Jalen Hurts still being able to get it. I think Jalen Hurts, it's hard because let's be honest, there's a lot of great quarterbacks right now in the National Football League. And something I think exciting for a lot of us, especially your viewership, Harold, there's a lot of good black quarterbacks right now in the National Football League, right? That his name is being put up against. And so I think for him, he sometimes gets forgotten. And Donald brought up the Commanders roster. Well, there's a lot of big names on Philadelphia's roster. So I think that's also why there are expectations for Jalen. That maybe folks like Jaden Daniels, of course, he's a rookie, but Jalen has higher expectations because on paper, the Eagles look very good, and they looked very good at the top of the season. And that's why, again, everybody said the Eagles have to get back to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has no excuses. You look at the receivers on that squad, right? The tight end, I think Goddard is not talked about enough when it comes to what their run game, which is very dangerous, right? As the Commanders and other teams have found out. So I think for Jalen, it was just getting it done. But also, I think when you look at Jalen, we've looked at the relationship with his head coach, right? Nick Sirianni. We have heard rumors and whispers, right? That maybe that locker room isn't as tight. But through it all, he's prevailed through. And I think Jalen Hurts is saying, look, y'all need to give me the respect. I continue to do it. So all in all to say, I think, he's took a lot of the doubt. He's took a lot of the hate, and he plays in a very tough city. If y'all don't know, Philadelphia Eagles fans aren't known to be the kindest folks. And he's taken that all and has delivered. And so I'm actually excited for him for this moment. And though it's going to be hard to beat Kansas City, I really do hope that for his legacy, he's able to cement it with a Super Bowl win and a desperate city.
But Donald, I think Kelsey makes an excellent point where the thing that we've been hearing about Philadelphia Eagles fans, Philadelphia 76ers fans, Philadelphia Phillies fans. Philadelphia fans are probably the hardest to please. We know that they are very vocal and muscular in their expressions of discontent. And there is just, even when you talk about Nick Sirianni, they loved him when he was winning as a coach, but, they were ready to tar and feather him when he lost one game. What is it with Philadelphia fans?
Can I be blunt? Philadelphia fans.
Don't tell me how you really feel.
Well, look, I'm a media member, but I had 3 other people with me, so we went to the game yesterday. I hadn't been to a Philadelphia game since I was a kid. Philadelphia fans are nasty. Period. Now some that are decent, but for the most part, like they'll jump in your your face for no reason. If you had, we had our gear on, it was bad. But also to your point, they're very hard on their players. Like a guy that was next to me, when something didn't go right, it wasn't. How come it couldn't be about the Commanders just made a good play? It had to be, well, you didn't call this play, they didn't call that play. I think Sirianni has done a really, really good job. We have to also remember, if you go back to last year, right? Okay, got off to the great start, didn't end well, but he lost two coordinators that became head coaches. And now he's got the right system in place. They got the right coordinators, and they're moving forward. This is a really, really good football team. But yes, Philadelphia fans, you can't please them. They hate the opponent, the opponent's fans, and they also hate their own team, even though that own team is now back in the Super Bowl. And I might add, this is the third Super Bowl in 8 years? That's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know. There must be something in the cheese whiz for those Philly cheese. I'm just don't eat that stuff. Wings and mambo sauce all the way. And yeah, you'll throw in a crab cake too. And to your point, Kelsey, when you were making the comparison with the Ravens, don't forget and I know you know this, the Ravens have 2 Super Bowls, okay?
Yes.
Two championship rings.
Yes. And as a newer franchise, mind you, remember when the Baltimore Ravens were formed. But, I think, Harold, just really quickly, there were a lot of folks in this area, right? I knew we weren't going to get it, but everybody, just think if we had that DC versus Baltimore game, right? That Commanders
the Battle of the Beltway
game, right? Because usually the Ravens, right, have been like the standard, right? They're the team that is going to be good. They're expected to go to the postseason. The Commanders, the last time they were in the playoffs, I was working for the team then. You have to go back to the COVID year, right? And they played Tampa Bay also in that game. But this was the year the whole NFC East was bad. So this is when they were the Washington football team too, right? We've been through name changes. We've been through ownership. Commanders have been through a lot of stuff. And we're under Taylor Heineke, who everyone said, he has heart. He wears his heart on his sleeve. But Donald talked about earlier, they didn't know about the future of the franchise with him. So I think, again, when you look at this right now, it's so special for this area. And I know folks outside this area might not understand it, but DC and Baltimore don't usually get good things together. Together, both these franchises being led by both young Black quarterbacks carrying so much on their back, I think it means something and it speaks to something and it makes people pay attention, right, to football in this area. So I'm excited about the future of both these franchises. And I can wholeheartedly say I do see Super Bowls for both of these young quarterbacks in both of these areas in their tenure in the National Football League.
And when that happens, I know you're going to get a diamond grill, Kelsey.
Lamar will be matching.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
But mine might be cubic zirconia because my paycheck.
I doubt it. All jokes aside, in these last few minutes, and I'll start with you, Donald. What do the Commanders need to do to be back here next year? I would argue that 12-5, they really don't need to change anything. But I don't know. I'm certainly not an insider. I'm just a guy who watches football. What do you think, Donald?
Yeah, I think first of all, you need to need to re-sign Louvu. You got to re-sign Frankie Louvu.
That guy is dangerous.
He was flying last night.
Exactly. So that's number one. Number two, I don't think you can keep both Payne and Allen. When you're playing that position and you're making that kind of money, you should demand a double team. Now, Allen had, he was hurt this year. I think Payne had a decent season, but decent's not good enough when you're paying those guys that kind of money. I'm okay with Marshawn Lattimore. I believe he was injured. I want to see more. You know what I mean? But I think you need another corner. I think you definitely need another. Sanders still is straight. I think you need one more corner. And then I think you need to shore up that offensive line, and you need another wide receiver. I think you need another bona fide wide receiver to go along with Scary Terry. Do you bring Ertz back? Maybe I think he was very solid for Daniels this year. So I think there's a lot of questions to be answered from a talent perspective, because like I said, I don't think this is a great roster per se as it stands right now. But anytime you've got a Daniels, you've got a Terry, you re-sign Louvu, that guy brings heart. So those are just some of the things I think that they need to improve upon for next year.
Kelsey, I'll let you have the last couple of minutes. What needs to change, if anything, to bring them back to this point and to make them even better?
Yeah, I think Donald honestly hit the nail on the head with everything he said. I think folks have to remember, though, it's going to be the chemistry, right, that needs to be built with this squad. Lots of new faces in this, in this program, right, that Dan Quinn was building. And so I think, with continuity, it's going to get a lot better. Sorry, I had to bring up Baltimore one more time, but the reason why a lot of folks were mad about Mark Andrews dropping that ball, he came in with Lamar Jackson and they've had time to build chemistry, right? And I think that was I said before the season, Zach Ertz would be the most important piece, and people thought I was crazy, like he's old. Zach Ertz is a veteran, bona fide veteran, and I knew he was going to want to reprove himself here in Washington. I think a lot of the names that you said were right, but Brian Robinson Jr., he's also going to be under contract for 2025, so I think he's somebody that you have to look for. The run game in Washington, I want more of. I thought Eckler was a stud when healthy and could really help to move the ball, but to really be a threat, I think in the National Football League, you got to have a consistent run game. So I would like the run game to increase more. The offensive line, missing Cosme was huge. Somehow, some way, you got to get good backups as well, right? I know everyone thinks about the starters, but it's going to happen, especially in the trenches, because there's a lot of weight and a lot of pressure being put there, right? So you have to make sure that's bona fide. But all in all, you got to get Jaden Daniels, some weapons. Dyami Brown is a big question. He had a great postseason, but do you bring him back? Or, I think you do need a number 2 if you really want Jaden Daniels, because we know he can sling that ball, but he needs somebody that he can sling it to, and someone else, because there was so much pressure on Terry last night. I was a little disappointed how much he was targeted in that second half. But all in all, Harold, it's bright. And I don't think it's as bad. And now I think the good thing about the Commanders is they don't just have to rely on the draft. I think they have a confident front office where they can make good decisions through free agency. So I'm super excited about the future of Commanders, the most excited I've been in a long time since covering and working for this franchise.
Yeah, and I think we would be remiss even if, you got to give Marcus Mariota some love. I mean, the guy's good, and he's a good backup.
Yeah,
so
win.
Right. I mean, look, if something were to happen to Jaden Daniels, I think he can step in. If something happens temporarily, and I would certainly say, if nothing else, Kelsey, talk to Jaden Daniels' mom and say, let the guy go out on a date now.
Oh, no. I was here for John Wall years. I heard too many Rose Bar stories. I do not want to know with Jaden Daniels. No. Keep him out the clubs. Keep him away from the girls.
Yeah, so he'll just have to be the Zen quarterback for his entire career.
Tell him to borrow the book from A.J. Brown and just read Inner Excellence when he has time. That's what I want Jaden to do. Just learn about his inner excellence inside.
There you go. Donald Ware, Kelsey Nelson, thank you both for having this conversation. We will definitely get them next time, and looking forward to Super Bowl 59. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Monday, January 27th, 2025. I'm